Welcome to Broken Hearts of Reddit. Get ready to hear a story of betrayal that will chill you to the bone. This is a story about how I stood, rooted to the floor, and watched the mother of my children kissing two men at once. Then she laughed, as if I had died many years ago. And perhaps, at that moment, I did die. I just didn't know it yet. My name is Daniel. I'm an ordinary person living an ordinary life. A bank analyst, my life is governed by numbers. A clear schedule, calculated decisions, no risks. At least, that's how it was until last week. My wife is Emma, a primary school teacher. Her life is a world of children's smiles, colored drawings, and gentle warmth. I always thought she was like her job, simple, kind, predictable. We met in college, and ever since, she has been my anchor. She didn't like noisy parties, preferring quiet evenings at home, reading a book or watching old movies. Emma was comfort, reliability, home. Our children, Lily and Noah, were an extension of our love, the living embodiment of 10 years of marriage. I always believed our union was a perfect, unbreakable structure. A house with a big yard, two wonderful kids, stable jobs, cozy evenings by the fireplace. We weren't just a family. We were a team. Everything together, always. I couldn't have imagined that one of the players had long been playing for another team. Life flowed in its usual rhythm. Mornings began with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that Emma left for me on the counter. Then came the children's calls, breakfast, getting ready for school and kindergarten. I would drive them, and Emma would head to her small school. I loved watching her get out of the car, a smile on her face as she greeted her colleagues and the other parents. She was a ray of light in their world. I always thought we had no secrets. We shared everything. Weekend plans, worries about the children, funny stories from work. I was confident in her every word, her every glance. It seemed to me we were an open book to each other. It only seemed that way. The first crack appeared so subtly that I didn't even realize what it was. It was just a feeling, barely noticeable, like a breeze slipping through a closed window. Had Emma become more distant? No, that's too strong a word. It was just as if she wasn't entirely here, physically present, but her thoughts were somewhere far away. We were sitting at dinner, and I was talking about my new project. Usually, she would listen attentively, asking questions, but that evening, she just nodded, barely looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on something outside the window. A tree, an empty street. I asked, "Is something wrong, my love?" She flinched as if coming out of a trance, and smiled her usual warm smile. "No, everything's fine, just tired. The kids were very loud today." I believed her. Such moments began to repeat themselves. Not often, but enough for me to start noticing. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and see that she was awake, lying next to me, but her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. "Bad dream?" I would ask. "Yes, something scary," she would reply, clinging to me. And I would be reassured. My Emma, always so sensitive. There were other small things. She started to forget minor details that she used to remember. Whether I liked sugar in my coffee or not, that Lily's dance class was on Wednesday, not Tuesday. I put it down to fatigue, to stress. A teacher's job isn't easy. I even suggested she take a short vacation, but she refused, saying everything was fine. Last week, we were going to my company's corporate party. Emma didn't like such events, but I really wanted her to come with me. It was the company's anniversary, and I was sure it would be fun. I persuaded her for a long time, telling her how important it was for me to have her by my side. She agreed, but without much enthusiasm. I didn't pay it any mind. She just wasn't a social person. The night before the party, I woke up to her sobbing. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face in her hands. I went over and hugged her. "Emma, what's wrong?" She looked up, her eyes full of tears. "I'm just scared. I'm afraid I won't be good enough, that I'll embarrass you. I don't know how to talk to your colleagues, Daniel. I'm just a teacher." My heart ached with tenderness. She was so naive, so pure. I stroked her hair, comforted her, and promised we would leave as soon as she felt uncomfortable. I was sure these were just her fears, her insecurities, and I believed her. I believed her every word. I believed her until the very end. She agreed to go to the party, and I felt like a winner. For me, it was a small step toward her becoming part of my world, not just me being a part of hers. I didn't know it wasn't a step, but rather a push that would send us both plummeting into an abyss. The corporate party was held at a luxurious hotel in the city center. The atmosphere was celebratory and loud, not at all what Emma liked, but I saw how hard she was trying. She smiled at my colleagues, politely answered their questions, and even took a couple of sips of champagne, though she usually didn't drink. I was so proud of her. She looked so beautiful in her dark blue dress, with her hair elegantly styled. Mine, only mine, or so I thought. I was distracted for a few minutes to talk to my boss, Mr. Smith, about an upcoming project. When I returned, Emma was gone. I looked around, but couldn't find her. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she had gone to the ladies' room, or just wanted some fresh air on the terrace. I had another glass of wine and continued my conversation with colleagues. Half an hour passed, and I started to get worried. I went out to the terrace, but she wasn't there. I checked the hall, but she wasn't there either. I began to feel my heart clench. A thought flashed through my mind. Something is wrong. I went looking. I walked past the party room and saw that some of the guests were already dancing. I looked around again, and that's when my attention was drawn to two figures standing in a distant, dimly lit corner. It was Emma and our new employee, John. They were talking about something, and Emma was laughing. I let out a sigh of relief. Just a chat. I didn't want to approach them and make her feel awkward. I waited for her to come back, but she didn't. I looked over again, and in that moment, I saw something that made my world crumble. I saw John lean in, and she didn't pull away. He kissed her. She didn't resist. I felt the blood rush to my head, my fists clench. I wanted to run up to them, hit him, scream, but something stopped me. I just stood there, frozen to the spot, and watched the scene. I saw her smile as he pulled away. That smile. I'll never forget it. It wasn't the smile she gave me. It was a smile full of fun, of happiness, and a surge of rage burned inside me. I wanted to walk over and ask her what she was doing, but at that moment, something happened that threw me off even more. Another man, Robert, our senior manager, walked up to them. He said something, and all three of them laughed. And then Robert also leaned in and kissed her, and she didn't pull away. She was smiling. That same joyful, fun-filled smile. I stood and watched, my heart tearing into pieces. I couldn't believe my eyes. My Emma. My quiet, modest, homebody Emma, who never went to parties, who hated noise, who was a model, mother, and wife. I looked at her and didn't recognize her. She was a completely different person. I don't know how long I stood there, but I remember when she turned and saw me. Her smile didn't fade. She wasn't embarrassed. She just looked at me. and there wasn't a hint of regret or fear in her eyes, only that smile. And that smile killed me. I turned and walked away. I couldn't look at her anymore. I went outside, got in my car, and drove home. I was on autopilot, not noticing anything around me. My mind was empty, but there was only one sound in my head, her laugh. I arrived home, went to our bedroom, and packed my things. I didn't take much, just the essentials. I took the children, who were already asleep, and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I was never coming back. I sat in the car, parked at an all-night supermarket. The children were asleep in the back seat. Lily was curled up, hugging her teddy bear, and Noah was sprawled out, snoring softly. I looked at them in the rearview mirror and felt tears stinging my eyes. I had to be strong for them, but my strength had been destroyed by that smile. I tried to make sense of what had happened. It wasn't just a kiss, it was something more. It was her smile. A smile she gave to them, but never to me. It was a smile that said, "I'm having fun. I'm happy. I'm alive." I had never seen her like that. She was always reserved, calm, quiet. And here she was, fire, a flash, and I realized that I had never truly known her. I took the children to my parents' house. They were surprised and concerned, but I told them that Emma and I had just had a fight, and I needed some time to cool off. I couldn't tell them the truth. How could I? How could I tell them that their perfect, kind, loving daughter-in-law wasn't who they thought she was? How could I shatter their world? I returned to our empty house. The silence weighed on me. I walked into the bedroom. Her scent still lingered there. The smell of clean laundry and something sweet, floral. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. Fragments of memories flashed through my mind. 10 years. 10 years during which I believed we had a perfect marriage. I remembered us laughing, walking in the park, watching the stars. I remembered her smiling at me when I proposed. But that was a different smile, not the one I saw today. I don't know how long I lay there. I was woken by a phone call. It was her. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, at her name, and felt a wave of hatred wash over me. Hatred for her, for myself, for those men, for this life. I threw the phone on the bed and left the room. I sat on the couch in the living room and just stared at the wall. I felt empty, hollowed out. I decided to act. I couldn't just sit and wait. I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to understand what had happened. I wanted to know how long it had been going on. I wanted to know who these men were. I started my own investigation. I logged into her social media account. I knew her password because we never hid anything from each other. I started looking through her photos, her friends, her messages. I scrolled through the pages, my heart beating faster and faster. I found nothing suspicious. No strange messages, no odd photos, just pictures of the kids, colleagues, family. I began to think I was wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe it was just an innocent flirtation. Maybe I had overreacted. But then I saw something that made me flinch. I saw that Emma was a member of a private group called Salsa Lovers Club. I knew nothing about this. She had never told me she liked dancing. I clicked on the page, and my heart clenched in horror. I saw photos there, photos from parties. She was there, laughing, dancing, and there were John and Robert. They were together, in every photo, hugging her, holding her hands. They were there, together, all three of them. And it wasn't just dancing. These were parties. Loud, bright, with alcohol and loud music. This was a completely different Emma, not the one I knew. I scrolled through the photos, and I felt my world crumbling. I saw that this had been going on for a long time, years. I saw photos from different parties, in different outfits, and she was with them everywhere. I realized she had been leading a double life. She was my wife, my quiet, stay-at-home wife, but in reality, she was someone else. I felt cheated, humiliated. I felt used. That I had been nothing more than a cover for her secret life. And I knew this wasn't the end. I knew this was only the beginning. The silence in the house, which had seemed oppressive just a minute ago, was now deafening. I sat, staring at the laptop screen where the photos flashed, and it felt like I had gone deaf. Deafened by the truth that had poured over me like a torrent. Salsa Lovers Club. What an irony. It wasn't just a hobby. It was her parallel universe, a place where there was no room for me, for our children, for our life together. I started to scroll through more photos, and with each new image, my heart cracked a little more. In one of them, Emma, John, and Robert were sitting in a cafe, laughing at something. I recognized the cafe. It was a couple of blocks from the school where Emma worked. I always thought she had lunch there alone, or with her female colleagues. It turned out she was having lunch with them. With these two men who now held such an important place in her life, that she preferred them over me. I remembered a time when she came home later than usual. I asked her why she was late. I was helping a colleague, Daniel. We have reports to turn in, you know. I believed her. I believed her because I had always believed her. But she, it turned out, was spending that time with them. They were her colleagues, and she wasn't helping them with reports. She was living her secret life. I felt shame wash over me. How could I have been so blind? I remembered all her excuses. I'm tired. I have a headache. I want to go to bed early. I thought she was just tired from work, from the kids. But it turned out she was tired of me, of our life, of our lie. She lied to me, smiling, looking me in the eye, while I believed her every word. I remembered how she once refused to go to the movies with us, saying she didn't feel well. I stayed home to take care of her, and she said she needed to be alone. I went for a walk with the kids, and when I returned, she was already asleep. I thought she just wanted some solitude, but it turned out she was with them. I found a photo taken that very evening. They were at a party, happy, content, all three of them. I felt like an idiot. I was so consumed by my work, our stable life, that I didn't notice her drifting away, building her new life in which I had no place. I was like an accomplice to her crime who, because of my own foolishness, my own blindness, my own trust, helped her hide her secret. I found their correspondence. It was encrypted, but I knew how to break it. I was an analyst. I could break any code, and I broke hers. I read their messages, and every line was like a knife to the gut. They called her our queen. She called them my knights. They discussed their meetings, their nights, their plans. They talked about how they loved spending time as a trio, how happy they were, how they waited for her. I read it all, and my stomach churned. She wasn't just my wife. She was queen to two other men. And me? Who was I? I was stupid Daniel, who sat at home with the kids while his wife had fun. I was just a cover. In one of the messages, I saw an address. It was an apartment address. I typed it into a search engine and saw that it was an apartment in the city center. and it was registered in Emma's name. I knew nothing about this apartment. I knew nothing about her second life, her club, her nights. I knew nothing about her. I had been living with a stranger. I had loved a stranger. And that stranger had destroyed my life. The silence in the house was so thick, I could hear my own heart beating. But it was no longer the rhythm I knew. It was a sound like a drum roll before an execution. I sat in the darkness, and the photos on the laptop screen glowed like neon signs, illuminating my shattered reality. I typed in the address of the apartment I found in the messages, and the navigation system showed me the route. I knew I had to go there. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to be absolutely sure that I hadn't gone mad. I got in my car and drove. My legs were shaking. My hands were trembling. But I held the steering wheel tight, as if my life depended on it. I arrived at the building. It was an old but well-maintained high-rise in the very heart of the city. I found the right entrance, the right apartment. I stood in front of the door and felt rage choking me. Rage and shame. I raised my hand to knock, but then I stopped. What would I say? "Hello, darling. I'm your husband, and this, it seems, is your lover, and this is the second one. What? Working on reports?" I lowered my hand. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just burst into their world and destroy it. I was too weak for that. I was too crushed. I went back to the car and just sat there. I watched the window of their apartment, where the lights were on. I imagined what they were doing in there, laughing, drinking wine, dancing, and my heart was breaking. I wanted so badly for this to be a dream, but it was reality, and it was cruel. I spent the whole night in the car. I watched their windows like a television screen, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what I was waiting for. I was just waiting. I was waiting for her to come out, for her to see me, for her to feel some remorse. But she never came out. In the morning, as I was about to leave, John came out of the entrance. He was wearing the same suit as at the corporate party. He was smiling as if he had just had the best night of his life. I felt the rage flare up in me again. I wanted to get out, to hit him, but I held back. I just watched him get into his car and drive away. I waited a little longer, and then Robert came out. He was also in the same suit. He was also smiling. He too got into his car and drove away. I realized they had spent the entire night there, all three of them, in the apartment she bought with our savings. In an apartment I knew nothing about. I felt disgust overwhelm me. Disgust for her, for them, for myself. I went back home. I sat in an armchair in the living room and just stared into the void. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt the emptiness consume me. I was empty. I was dead. I don't know how long I sat like that. Maybe an hour, maybe two. But then I heard the front door open. It was her, Emma. She walked into the house, and her face was lit up with a smile. The same one I had seen at the corporate party. The smile that had killed me. "Daniel, are you here? I thought you were still at your parents'. I'm so glad you're back. I missed you so much," she said. She came toward me to hug me, but I pulled away. She looked surprised. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Something is very wrong." She looked at me, and there was not a single drop of understanding in her eyes. I just stared at her, at this beautiful woman I had loved for 10 years, and I didn't recognize her. I saw a stranger in her. She was a stranger, and I knew I couldn't live with her anymore. I stood up, took the things I had packed yesterday, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she cried. "I'm leaving," I said. "And I'm taking the children." "What are you saying? Have you gone mad?" she yelled, trying to stop me. But I didn't stop. I just walked out of the house. I got in the car and drove away. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was driving toward a new life. A life without her. And in this new life, there was no place for that smile, the smile that had destroyed my world. My new life began with a void. I returned to my parents, and their home became not just a refuge, but a place where I could lick my wounds. My mother, seeing my empty eyes, didn't ask any questions. She just hugged me and fed me, like she did when I was a child. My father just sat nearby, watched TV, and sometimes squeezed my hand. They gave me what I needed most: silence and peace. The children adapted quickly. They were so busy playing with their grandparents that they didn't notice my grief. I looked at them, and my heart ached with pain. I couldn't let them see how broken I was. I had to be strong. I had to be their rock. A few months passed. I started to recover. I found a new place to live, not far from my parents' house, so they could help me with the children. It was a small apartment, but it was ours. Mine and the kids. I went back to work, but my job no longer brought me joy. I was like a machine. I did my job, but my soul was empty. One day, when I was picking the children up from school, I met her. Her name was Sarah. She was a teacher at the same school Lily attended. She wasn't like Emma. She wasn't bright and loud. She was quiet, calm, and there was kindness in her eyes. We started to talk. At first, we just exchanged a few words when I was picking up the children. Then I started to stay a little longer. We talked about everything. She was very attentive. She listened to me, and I felt that she understood me. She was so gentle, so caring. She didn't try to replace Emma, but she became for me and the children what I had always thought Emma should be: home. The children loved her immediately. She played with them, read them books, helped them with their homework. She wasn't a mother to them, but a friend, and I saw them blossom. They became happier, calmer, and so did I. I felt that my heart, which had been like a frozen block of ice, was beginning to thaw. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I told her the whole truth. I told her about the corporate party, about Emma, about her double life. I told her how I found their messages, about her sleeping with two men. I was ready for her to turn away from me, for her to leave. But she didn't. She just took my hand and said, "It's not your fault. You loved her, and you believed her. It's her fault." I started to cry. I hadn't cried since the day I left our house. I cried because I felt that I wasn't alone. I found a friend of mine who was a police officer. I told him the whole story. He looked at me with sympathy. He said he would see what he could do. A few days later, he called me. "Daniel," he said, "I found something. Your wife. She wasn't just sleeping with them. She was an escort. She worked for an agency. And those two men, they were her clients." I froze. I couldn't believe my ears. Emma, my Emma, a primary school teacher, the mother of my children. She was selling herself for money. I felt a new wave of disgust wash over me. For her, for myself. I had been so blind. I don't know what happened to her. I don't want to know. I heard she lost her job. I heard she was left alone. I heard she never found happiness. But I don't care anymore. I have let her go. I have let go of my pain. I have let go of my hatred. I realized that I needed to move on with my life. I realized that I needed to be happy. For my own sake. For the sake of my children. For the sake of Sarah. She became my light at the end of the tunnel. She showed me that life can be beautiful. that love can be real, and that I am worthy of happiness.